Hi, I'm Elle Wadsworth and I'm a PhD student.
Hi, I'm Dave Hammond, a professor in the School of Public Health at the University of Waterloo.
On October the 17th, 2018, non-medical cannabis will be legalized in Canada, only the second country in the world to do so. In order to capture the Canadian policy experience, we have interviewed many stakeholders across the country prior to legalization.
The series will cover how cannabis will be regulated, changes in the cannabis industry, and why Canada legalized cannabis in the first place.
Key component of this legislation is protecting young people, and so by coming in with a legal age of 18, it's helping to ensure that young people aren't going to be entering into the criminal justice system if they are using, and we know based on the data now that there will be youth who will continue to use cannabis under the age of 18. I should point out that the provinces and territories are able to increase the legal age, and there are 2 provinces that have actually done that. And the other key point is the importance of public education. So just because the legal age is 18, that doesn't mean it's safe to use. That's just simply the legal age of access. We need to get the message out that there are risks associated with cannabis use among young people, and that should be part of that public education, sustained public education, so that young people are made aware of the risks and can make informed decisions. So youth are a high-risk group for a number of reasons. We know that they are frequent users of cannabis, so if you look at all the different age groups, they are at the top of the list. Their brains are also undergoing a great deal of maturation and development up until about the age of 25. And so for young people who are using cannabis on a regular basis, or using higher potency products, or using heavy amounts of cannabis, there are some concerns about impacts on their brain development. Aside from brain development, we know that cannabis can impact cognitive functioning, particularly among youth who are using frequently and at an early age. There's also implications for mental health. So the evidence is fairly consistent that frequent and early onset use of cannabis can increase the risk of a psychotic episode. We know that cannabis is an addictive substance. So there are some unique risks for young people that we need to be concerned about, and need to get the message out there that there are some risks associated with cannabis.
The point being that with legalization, I think some people may believe that, we're legalizing this because it is benign and harmless. So it'll be important to get the message out that that actually, that's not what this is about, that cannabis, does come with risks, basically, and that the goal of legalization is, or at least should be, to mitigate those risks by regulating the product. One very useful tool here will be the lower risk cannabis use guidelines that were recently released by a group led by a CAMH scientist.
The CAMH low risk cannabis use guidelines are a really evidence-based, valuable resource that Canadians can turn to. So such things like, if you're going to use cannabis, try to reduce the frequency of your use and the amount that you're using. Try to wait 6 to 8 hours before driving a motor vehicle, because it can impair your ability to drive safely. So those, I think, would be my main messages that we would want to communicate to Canadians. I don't see a one-size-fits-all, so a message that's targeted at youth people is probably not going to resonate with seniors. And then you have, women who are thinking of becoming pregnant, and, individuals who are living with a mental health condition. So I really think we need to look at what are some of the key groups and make sure that the message, the public education message, is targeted to those groups, because I really don't think a one-size-fits-all approach is going to work. What we heard from young people is that they're really not having conversations with adults in their lives about cannabis. They feel that they're not having, non-biased, non-judgmental conversations about cannabis, and they really, they have a lot of opinions, they have a lot of thoughts, and they really want to be able to have these discussions. Some of the other things we heard from young people, they're doing their own research. So they're going online, they're trying to learn more about cannabis. In some cases, they, were very knowledgeable about certain effects. In other cases, not so much.
We had no formal lessons on cannabis. Anything that I've learned about cannabis is through friends, through acquaintances, just people talking about it as a conversation. No formal education.
I don't think I was taught anything about cannabis in high school specifically. We were just taught to stay away from drugs, stay away from cigarettes if possible. Kids would always kind of lean towards that. But I think cannabis is kind of treated like the rest of the drugs in the world. While now we're kind of learning that, it is a bit more acceptable. So I think, first of all, things need to be changing in high schools to kind of differentiate that, and it should be treated more of like alcohol rather than other drugs that you learn about in high school.
I know as part of the legalization, there's strong investments in public education. So the intent is really to get that information out there so that people, including youth, can make an informed decision about cannabis use, how to safely use it if they decide to use. So what we heard from young people when we were conducting our qualitative research is that they don't just want to hear about the negatives and the risks. They want to hear both sides of the story. So they want to hear about, what are some of the positive reasons or positive effects of cannabis use. So looking at, Canadians that are using cannabis for medical purposes. We know that a lot of young Canadians are using cannabis because of the good feelings and the euphoria they feel. So we need to acknowledge that. So young people told us loud and clear, make sure the messages are balanced.
I definitely like to see the basics, things like what marijuana is, what it does to you. A lot of people may just be getting high and not even knowing what it's doing to them, how it's interacting with their body. So the very basics like that, what it's doing in their body. As well, I want strongly emphasized the long-term effects of marijuana use. So using it daily or every now and then, the kind of long-term effects it can have on someone, especially at different ages. Secondly, I want education about the effects of marijuana in driving. It should really be emphasized that driving under the influence of marijuana should be a no-go, And thirdly, the effects of marijuana on mental health. A lot of people are prone to mental health problems, and that can be triggered by marijuana consumption. I think that should be strongly emphasized as well. The government, the Canadian government, I would hope that they are researching it, putting their own time and money, resources into it, and hopefully, for example, like a government site that has all the information that we should know about it, as opposed to maybe like information from cannabis retailers. They might skew a few things to portray a more positive light on cannabis. Having it out in the spotlight is a good chance to make it easier to educate people on it, as opposed to it be like a taboo thing that you shouldn't talk about. Maybe it'll be easier to talk about now and properly educate people about it.
I think younger audiences right now are trusting dispensaries. There's that feeling of being able to walk into somewhere and get something off the shelf. Regardless if it's legal or illegal, it seems more real. So I think there's a lot of trust there. Moving forward, I think the government might need to do a better job at marketing the pros and cons of cannabis towards a younger generation, but in a way that is kind of a bit more relatable than what we've seen so far.
And even though it's a little counterintuitive, it is possible that legalization gives the government some credibility that they have not had in decades, given our traditional messaging. And it's a very difficult and delicate dance, but it's possible that it gives them an actual opening and some credibility to communicate with youth in a more honest way. It certainly gives them a mandate to do that. And we are already seeing resources being dedicated to prevention and public education that I don't think we've ever seen this level of resources for cannabis. So it's starting conversations. The work that we've done with youth suggests that there is an appetite for information.